Hello, everyone. Today I am talking about the newest movie in the Mad Max franchise, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Before I get to that, if you could give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, it would be a great help. I try to stay consistent with some newer movie reviews and rankings, but let me know any ideas you guys think might be interesting for me to talk about that I haven't talked about yet. As a quick rundown on my thoughts of the Mad Max franchise, I'm going to be perfectly honest. Overall, I'm not a huge fan. The original Mad Max is fine, Road Warrior is pretty dang good, and Beyond Thunderdome was bizarre. Not bad, just weird. I don't think any of them are bad movies at all. Don't get me wrong. They're all fairly solid. Just not something that is my favorite thing. But that being said, I am a huge fan of Mad Max Fury Road. For me, it is definitely a top 10 favorite action film of all time, maybe even top 5. Fury Road is an awesome 2-hour visceral and non-stop adrenaline-pumping film. It's actually a miracle that Fury Road exists and is as good as it is. Like I said in my most anticipated movies of the summer video, go check that out. Furiosa has been one of the movies of 2024 that I have been the most excited about. Obviously, it didn't need to be as good as Fury Road. Hoping every new movie that comes out is as good as a masterpiece like Fury Road is ridiculous, but something people generally do. But expecting something like that is a problem. Just because a movie isn't as good as another movie doesn't mean that this movie isn't great. And I'm glad to say that Furiosa absolutely delivers. I loved this movie. Furiosa is an awesome and a rather epic in-scale action movie. It tackles a wide variety of factions while also being a deeply personal story for Furiosa that explores from when she's very young to the events prior to Fury Road. It is an entirely different beast from the previous movie. Fury Road is a 2-hour car chase movie that takes place essentially over 3 days, while this prequel spans over a decade in time and generally lets the film's characters and world building breathe a bit. One could say that Furiosa is slower than Fury Road, which of course it is, but that doesn't really say much because Fury Road moves faster than basically every movie. So even at a more meticulous pace, you could say, this film's pacing is fantastic. It's 2.5 hours long, but does not feel like that length at all. Generally, prequels are not really my thing as far as storytelling goes. The usual, we already know what happens to these people criticism comes to my mind, but when a prequel is done well, it can enrich the characters and stories of a world, and I think that this is what happens with this movie. The events of this film make the impact and story of Fury Road feel even more satisfying than it already was, while also managing to tell a compelling and self-contained story in its own right. First up, I want to talk about the cast. For me, the standout here is Chris Hemsworth, who is absolutely fantastic here. This is a type of role that I've never seen him do, and I think he crushed every minute of screen time that he had. He is a completely unhinged villain that you love to hate. Dementis has his own interesting motivations. He thinks of himself as a way to bring order to the wasteland, but he's also very clearly the bad guy of the movie. Anya Taylor-Joy is also fantastic as a young adult version of Furiosa. I believe George Miller stated that she only has something like 30 lines of dialogue, which I definitely noticed when I was watching the movie, and I thought was pretty great, honestly. You get to know everything about this character and what motivates her just by the physical acting, and when she does speak, it makes it that much more impactful. That said, Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa isn't in the movie until at least 50 minutes to an hour into it. The girl who plays the child version of Furiosa absolutely crushes this first hour of the movie. Like Anya Taylor-Joy, she doesn't say much, but you feel and understand every moment of what is going on in her head. Everyone else in the film is also doing a great job. A lot of returning faces from Fury Road are here, which I really enjoyed seeing. Obviously, Hugh Keays-Byrne doesn't play Immortan Joe here because he sadly passed away a few years ago, but I also thought that the guy who played him in this film does a solid job as a slightly younger version of what is now a fairly iconic villain. Aside from the acting and characters, I think this movie does a great job at fleshing out this version of a post-apocalyptic world with all of the factions that are involved. There's the three towns that were initially established in Fury Road, the Citadel being the only one that's really explored in that movie. Then there's also Gastown and the Bullet Farm, along with Dementis' gang, which is the new group. All these factions are struggling for control of this section of the wasteland, and I thought all of that stuff was fascinating, especially when it's all in the midst of a very focused and deeply personal revenge story. Now, obviously, you can't talk about a Mad Max movie without talking about the action, and it is fantastic here. Fury Road obviously has more action because of the nature of that movie, but Furiosa has plenty of amazing sequences that left me speechless. In particular, there is a sequence involving one of the war rigs on the open road that matched some of the insanity of Fury Road's action, honestly. There's some really unique things about this sequence involving some pretty mind-blowing camera work. And there's also another sequence involving the Bullet Farm that was quite extensive and was completely riveting. The stunt work, as usual, is fantastic, and the cinematography involved in every sequence is also stunning, regardless of the scale of the sequence, whether it's large or small. Visually, this movie is amazing, especially on a giant screen. I saw this in IMAX, and even without the expanding aspect ratio, it is well worth seeing this movie in that format. Pretty much every shot in the first 30 minutes took my breath away. That all being said, the visuals do lead me to some of my nitpicks about this film. None of these took away from my experience at all, because this is absolutely one of the best films of the year, and I will be shocked if it doesn't stay in my top 10 by the end of December. Occasionally, some shots and visuals have a very clear look of green screen going on. It's not that the shot is poorly composed, but more of a visual composite job that probably could have been accomplished with a little bit more finesse. I think just a bit more time to make the blend of composites and practical effects would have gone a long way to make these specific shots blend in more with the rest of the movie. That being said, 95% of this movie or more looks incredible, and only occasionally a shot would pop up like that. Another nitpick would be that Junkie XL's score isn't as memorable or compelling as his music for Fury Road, but generally he also does a good job with the music here. And like I said, for me, these are all minor nitpicks that did not take away from my experience with this movie at all. I just had to include these mentions so the video wouldn't just be a constant barrage of praise, because I can tend to do that with movies I love. Some things that might bother other people generally don't bother me much unless I find a film to be boring or fairly unengaging, which is definitely not the case with this movie. Overall, Furiosa 100% lived up to my excitement and is easily one of my favorite movies of this year so far. George Miller has delivered another compelling film on a narrative, action, and visual level that strikes a great balance between all of the moving pieces of the narrative. George Miller also has a great eye for the color palette and compositions of this film that match with Fury Road a lot and makes it a great companion piece to that movie. I 100% recommend seeing this movie in theaters, ideally a premium format for the best experience possible, but any theater will do, seeing as the box office tracking isn't great so far, unfortunately. I don't get what's going on with people lately. The Fall Guy bombed and is already available digitally. There have been so many great movies in the last few years that people just haven't gone to see, even though the word of mouth is great and it's highly praised and it's really entertaining. But that's a topic for a different day and maybe a different video in the future, if you'd like to see me discuss that, of course. But please don't let something as great as this movie bomb at the box office. I really hope it does at least decently. It doesn't need to do gangbusters numbers, but I really hope it doesn't bomb. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments on this film, and remember to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the Cinegreg channel. Okay, bye.
If it is to be said, so it is.